All right, come back, Warby. Come here. Come here, Warby. All right. Warby, come here. Come here. Come on. Come here. Come here. Come here. Up, up, up. Up, 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 up. Come here. Up. Oh. This will be great for outtakes. Come here, Warby. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. All right. Okay. So, I'm going to be performing now. Eternals. Welcome, guys. I have a little announcement to make. I am now simulcasting this onto Instagram. Yeah, I ran into another few film buffs this past week, and I don't know. I just got the I got the understanding that podcasts are not really easy to reach to. I mean, there are for some folks like myself and many others who are already kind of familiar with podcasts. They're not really sure what they are. But for the most part, people like everything pretty accessible. So I'm simulcasting this on Instagram. So if you'd like to see what I look like when I have my reactions about these very candid reviews I'm going to be making about a lot of these movies and TV shows that you'll catch on your streaming, well, you'll see it right there on long video time on my Instagram at official Casey Amois. I think I may have spoken in the past about this. Those are my longtime fans, my listeners. Thank you guys so much for being here once again. I spoke about this in the past. I think I'm definitely gonna make it happen. I'm gonna be real honest with you here. I know I'm taking a little too long, but I loved my Wrapped. Spotify did like a whole Wrapped thing, like a whole Wrapped session, a whole Wrapped posting about what my year looks like overall with this podcast. And I gotta say, I didn't like it too much. I was glad that my streaming results went up 131%, but I'm looking at myself like, I could really go higher. You know what I mean? I could really go higher. I think the year I started, I got more hits the year I started, or that brief little month stint that I had. I'm literally thinking of the tribute I made to our fallen king, who recently had his 45th birthday just this past week. Happy belated birthday to our king in heaven, Chadwick Boseman. And then I subsequently did a review on Jojo Rabbit. I think that's very polar opposite of me now that I think about it in hindsight, but I wanted to get the review out there, and I thought Jojo Rabbit was pretty interesting considering the racist subject material that Taika Waititi decided to go into. Anyway, that's a long sequitur to get back into this moment, where I'll probably have little tidbits, little notes here and there. Man, I gotta say, it's amazing. It's amazing what you can accomplish with technology, and I am a witness of it. Anyway, today's episode is going to be a double header. I'm gonna go ahead and deliver on my promise to not only watch the Eternals, but I'll also watch the 2016 Ghostbusters as well, with Melissa McCarthy, Leslie Jones, Kristen Wiig, and Susan McKinnon, if my memory serves me right. And it also has members of the original Ghostbusters cast sprinkled in there, with Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, with the exception of Harold Ramis, of course, may he rest in peace. Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, yeah, that gang is all in there. Miss Potts is also in there as well. Also, just a little fun fact I learned about that, concerning Ghostbusters, I mean. I learned that a part of the reason that Rick Moranis isn't returning to the franchise is because he got punched in the head once by a fan, or not really a fan. Can't call that person a fan if they recognize Rick Moranis, the geeky Rick Moranis, and decide to punch him in the back of the head. So yeah, he had a good enough reason for backing out of Hollywood after his wife died to just take care of their children. But I think after getting punched in the head, I think he would have a much better reason to hate Hollywood even more. So, yeah, I am getting back to the episode Eternals and Ghostbusters, a doubleheader. First things first with Eternals. I'm going to say this. Uh, it's definitely semi worth it, not really. To be honest, in my honest opinion, it's not worth it. Um, it follows the MCU canon fairly well. We're following the events um, after Endgame, and we're following the lives of these seemingly eternal beings who, spoiler alert, they are actually cosmic, celestial, created cybernetic organisms that do not age and will never age. But they're given an infinite amount of power that can be given or taken away if one has enough cosmic energy, if they're one of the Eternals, or if you're talking to a celestial. Um, an example of a celestial would be Peter Quill's father, Ego, who is basically a whole planet. Yeah, he's an example of a celestial, kind of a low grade one, considering there are other celestials who look like floating giants in the middle of space, like Arishem is his name. He's a bright red giant floating man that is basically tasked the likes of Salma Hayek and Brian Tyree Henry and Kumail Nanjiani and Dong Ju, I believe his name was. He plays as Gilgamesh. Yeah, they all have very interesting names. These heroes. In any case, it's not really worth it. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not. Although I will say it is a sort of detour there's a sort of detour in the storytelling. Do you know what I mean? Say hi, boys. I failed to introduce them once again. I'm forgetting I'm on video. Say hi, fellas. No, they don't really care. They're just chilling. Warbucks over here is on my left. He's a lovely little Chihuahua Jack Terrier mix. He's a very big dog for his age. He's 12. And Chester right here on my right, who is completely conked out, is a 14-year-old Chihuahua. Yes, folks, I'm sharing this. In any news, I'm gonna continue. Plot wise, it's fairly unexpected, and there's a disconnected chord here and there between the time in which they came to power as Eternals and established life as we understood it, fictionally, of course, life as we understand it here on Earth, with the first tool ever given to the earliest of humans, to the final time that they ever interacted, excuse me, with other human beings. Now I think around the last time they interacted, or at least disbanded in a sense, is around the time Tenochtitlan, the Spanish conquest, and I say Tenochtitlan, but I'm really talking about the Spanish conquest of the ancient Mayan civilization. Interestingly enough, the whole battle was stopped by one of the Eternals who uses mind control. Tells them, or basically uses mind control to stop the whole battle, and he has them follow them out of the city. Which is weird, I guess. I don't know how exactly that whole interaction would end. I mean, how do you explain that away? Do you know what I mean? Anyway, plot wise, there's a lot of back and forth from the time that they are establishing the Earth in its rise. Brian Tyree Henry's character, um, who's an inventor and is in control of God, I call it God level mechanics. So my man is interested in giving like the earliest of civilizations the earliest form of the steam powered engine, and everybody else told him to chill. So he decided to give them a plow. I want to say this. A part of me, at first, when I first watched this, wanted to say this was completely not worth it because the black guy in me was like, or literally on me, as you guys can clearly see. Thank you. We're on video. I'm gonna keep saying that, by the way. Um, yes, we're on video. The black guy, as you can clearly see, didn't like the fact that Brian Tyree Henry is also his character is also concerned with giving the human race a steam powered engine in our infancy, as opposed to and of course he's noticing that the bombs at Hiroshima, basically a variant of one of his inventions, um, is a decision that humans decided to go into. Now, I will say this. I'm not an all lives matter kind of man in its purest infancy or stage, in that whole form of all lives matter, and it's therefore trivializing and debunking and minimalizing a lot of very real traumas and very real problems within the black community. I'm going to say that. But I'm going to also say that loss of human life for anyone, whether black, white, Asian, and that's not just Asian because you thought of maybe Simu Liu, right? Or Kristen, is it Kristen Lee? Or no, let's just say Aquafina. I believe Kristen Lee is also in there as well. My memory is a little foggy there. Asians don't fall into the same prospect of just them being from China or Japan. You have Asians like Kumail Nanjiani or Mindy Kaling. Yeah, this is going really well, Casey. Anyway, it's a difficult part of the conversation to have. Because when you watch that scene, I watch that scene, I definitely see at least the comic book nerd in me, the actor in me, that really resonates with the characters, can see how much pain he would be going through, and understanding that he maybe have given them the earliest bomb, which was just a firecracker to show how they can make nice, pretty images in the sky. Well, firecracker eventually turned into, ooh, let's build a nuclear bomb. Yeah, to see the wasting away and destruction of life surrounding you based on one of your inventions is a jarring place to be. But anyway, the black man in me was just a little peeved and feeling a little disappointed with the fact that Brian Tyree Henry is black and he's probably survived through chattel slavery here in America. If he felt some type of way about the bomb in Nagasaki, I wonder what his perspective would have been in watching slavery, modern day slavery, go down and take place in America. I think obviously he would have avoided. Obviously, I mean he's in Hiroshima. He's up in Japan. But I wonder if the pangs of race. I wondered if the pangs of racism actually affected his character. You know, so, and I will say this: I call them cosmic, God-created cybernetic organisms. Those cybernetic organisms, the mechanics of that are so sophisticated that none of them, absolutely none of the Eternals knew that they were actually cyborgs. That's the interesting part. That's a whole plot twist there. In any case, that kind of goes into, really the plot is just, it's a division between their interference with the human race at its infancy, to dealing with it now in the back end after Endgame has happened and passed. And they want to understand why their enemies, aka the Deviants, who get this, are also kind of like their cousins or brothers in a sense, in helping planets grow into their infancy, which then instantaneously turns out that all of the planets that are ever invented or ever created in the universe are meant to be eggs that are fostering newborn celestials who want to rebuild and regenerate their race. And Earth was very well on its way to becoming the birthplace for a golden god. That's the crazy part. It's interesting that a lot of the movies that have to do with us are like, you know, they're all they all have to do with us having the most special human beings, the most special beings in all of the universe. There's something interesting about us, and our Earth is so awesome and wonderful that we don't just get any kind of God that blows us up and hatches, as you can understand. And a golden one comes out, a golden God. Like, this guy is made of gold, and he's a giant celestial. Anyway, I'm driving way down into the plot, and I have a whole other movie to get into. Plot-wise, it's different. It doesn't follow the standard format of action, action, action. There's a lot of acting, and there's a lot of dramatic reveal and loss here. But you also come to the understanding of what kind of power these beings have and what kind of trouble they get into for breaking the rules, as it were, because obviously, since we're all still here, the Celestial didn't really make it. They decided to kill a god. And Arishem was pretty upset about that and showed up and scooped their asses and was like, listen, I'm gonna scope your memories and I'm gonna see if these humans were so worth you killing another Celestial and getting in trouble with me for. Because my man, listen, he looks like he's just drifting in space, like he could do nothing, but he like shows up in front of Earth, Rick and Morty, show me what you got style, and then disappears. So yeah, getting into the acting, Brian Tyree Henry, Kumail Nanjiani, Salma Hayek, Lauren Midloff, Angelina Jolie, that whole list, like, they're really excellent. They did their job. You also have Rob Stark and Jon Snow, who are also in it. You know, being honest with you there, it kind of got a little tiresome to watch some of the actors navigate being Eternals as blending in as human beings versus being Eternals fully exposed and fully loving and understanding themselves and just being out there. Just throwing that out there. Doesn't shade their talent at all. It's a wonderful dynamite cast. Yeah. It's a part of the reason why I say it's sort of not worth it, because it's also playing off like if diversity and inclusion were product placement is what this like whole cast is starting to look like. Because they got everybody. They got literally everybody in it. Literal as many colors of the rainbow, of the human spectrum rainbow as they could grab are basically the Eternals. Are basically the Eternals. I drifted out there. I'm gonna go ahead and move on from the acting and get into costuming. Costuming is devastatingly excellent. We gain an idea or a sense of understanding of where they are on Earth within every walk of life they get into. Their armor is completely like, it's sick. It's devastatingly awesome to look at. Cosmetically, we are all aided and abetted in helping in the image of understanding what kind of levels the Eternals put themselves on. That's honesty there. Moving on to the musical score, it's banal. It's fairly predictable. Listen, I mean, if you've heard one, you kind of heard them all, in a sense, but not really. I honestly have to say, maybe it's just me who's noticed this, but as far as the musical score is understood, there is a nice pronounced, I guess you want to call it a chorus, that you can hear every single time when you watch or listen, when you watch a hero cross the screen or grace the screen. So the Guardians have their own tone. They have their song, which I do listen to. I listen to a lot of the MCU soundtracks. I personally have bits and pieces of the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. Definitely have the soundtrack to Black Panther with Luke Goranson. Goranson. Um, so musical score is actually everything, but in the Eternals case, it's not necessarily stand out, as it were. It just it just doesn't play as big a role or a big a part because I think it all plays into the fact that the plot and how all of these events unfold are not typical, or I guess you could say um, usual, or as regimented as every single Marvel movie has ever been since phase one. So, moving on to the cinematography. Cinematography wise, I guess you could say I want to say it's vaguely predictable in the sense that we understand what action looks like and how all of that unfolds. You will love how each of these Eternals are in action, as it were, when they're dealing with the deviants. Between Gilgamesh getting into a fight with a really massive one, to Athena, which is a weird deviation from Athena, but that's because the Eternals were also in Greece when they invented all of the stories about the Greek gods and mythology. So we now understand that the Eternals are the ones who are, yeah, the Eternals are the ones who are the Greek gods, as it were. And it's once again goes back to the plot. Hephaestus is Brian Tyree Henry's character. Who does that sound like? Hephaestus, the inventor and forger of all of the gods' tools, basically. Um, Cinematography wise, we're going back to that. It's an enjoyable experience, and you come to an understanding of just how much danger humans are in when the Eternals are around. And it's not to say that no one's ever in danger when heroes are around and they get into a fight with the bad guy. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that it feels like the Eternals sort of marry themselves to a lot of the civilians surrounding them. It's not enough to be caught in the crossfire. I'm failing to remember the name of the mind controlling Eternal, but he literally employed all of the villagers that he lived with and covered himself with, and mind controlled and taught them to build their own homes in the forest away from like big city urban life. Like he basically got them to like all build up and shoot their shotguns at deviants within like a gun firing or a gun squad sequence charge. Like you line up, one line shoots, the next line when they need to reload, the second line comes in and they shoot. Like it's crazy. You got this guy like getting the humans to fight some of his battles for him because he doesn't necessarily have that kind of strength himself to take punches, which is the other interesting thing. Um, so overall, I want to say it's not worth it. It's not worth the watch. Eternals isn't. A little disappointing for me racially, but I think that's just Disney overall. But at the same time, it's not entirely too bad when you consider the fact that Hephaestus, aka Brian Tyree Henry's character, didn't even know he was a cyborg. So I think him understanding or referencing himself as a black man and aligning himself with the struggle of black people on the globe, if he has been on the earth since its infancy, him not really aligning himself with that is kind of a bad on my what I think, but it's also I understand why he would forget or why he wouldn't put himself in it. Moving on to Ghostbusters, I'm gonna tell you right now, this is gonna be short and sweet. I can see why it sucked. It's not worth it. Not worth it. Not worth it. here's where I say that the attempt is not awful wrong. Um, Ghostbusters in its original form had a lot of people who were involved in SNL. So that's Dan Aykroyd, I think that's Bill Murray, and Harold Ramis also wrote for SNL. That's with the exception of Ernie Hudson, he was an actor. I see what they were trying to do. Is it Laura McKinnon? No, it's Susan McKinnon. With Susan McKinnon, I apologize if she ever hears this or sees this now because we're on video. Susan McKinnon, Leslie Jones, Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy. They all have their jobs and they did their work on SNL. So I could see where the attempt or thought was to bring in the ladies of SNL to have their own standalone film within the Ghostbusters universe to elevate and project their careers in a sense, but it just didn't work because they ineffectively created this whole thing where they created this whole awful kind of plot twist with how the antagonist kind of unfolds and introduces himself. We also, I also want to say this about Melissa McCarthy in a lot of projects that she's involved in. It's something I've noticed. She goes in with the humor of someone who watched enough material on whatever she's talking about to get like the crystallized main point elements of an issue or of a story. I think of Thunder Force wasn't all that great, but I feel like Melissa McCarthy watched a lot of MCU movies and a lot of superhero movies, and then condensed 5 or 6 points that make it a 6 superhero movie, a 6 superhero film. But at the same time, there isn't enough thought put into the comedy and understanding that you can't just watch something and glaze over what makes it cool and then just say, well, it's mine. So it's like, yeah, it's got this, it's got that, it's got that. All right, that's great. Because the whole thing that throws off Thunder Force, I know I'm going off on another tangent, is the fact that she's eating raw chicken, bro. Yeah, she eats raw chicken in Thunder Force. I don't know if it's fake. I don't know if it's real. I don't if it's either or. My lady gotta go get herself checked out. Probably did. I don't know how production handled that, but yeah. Anywho, there is that kind of glazed over factor, that glazed Melissa McCarthy factor going on in Ghostbusters. Essentially, all of the ladies replaced each and every one of the original members of Ghostbusters. That's Venkman, Spangler, man, I'm starting to blank out. This is crazy. Literally replacing every single Ghostbusters character, and it just didn't work because even then, in its original format and concern, when we think about Ghostbusters, we have characters that are awkward and sort of not really real, but they're cartoonish in a sense, and they never ultimately change for the better after the plot pretty much unfolds. So, ooh. Okay, there we go. All right, I think we had auditory difficulties there. Sorry about that. So, I have to point out that a part of the reason why I think the Ghostbusters 2016 version with Melissa McCarthy and Leslie Jones and Kristen Wiig and Susan McKinnon, I can go into the acting with this. All of those ladies basically played as their characters on SNL while the story plot is affecting the way that each and every one of the characters react. So it kind of felt like a giant skit, a giant sketch in a sense. You don't have them actually going through something emotional for them. Maybe 5 or 6 points of that where they're feeling a little downtrodden, sure, but there isn't like a real sense of this is a real person, this is a real character. It's just them really going for the humor constantly. And at a certain point it gets tiresome. Even when there's an emergency, when one of them gets possessed, uh God, you're just watching sketch characters get affected by real events that are happening in the story. And I guess that's great for those who are really interested in the humor. You know, it's got great humor. Um, a little misplaced in a few places here and there, but overall, I wouldn't say that it's a great movie. It's not really good. Also, they like did this thing with Slimer, right? So Slimer is the ghost, the green ghost, who basically ran up on Bill Murray and phased through him and slimed all over him and wreaked havoc until they caught him and put him in a box. Um, they gave like Slimer a female Slimer, but they made her blonde and gave her like a pink headband, like a Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man sort of thing. I don't think that worked out either. Oop. So if you're still watching, I just got cut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start recording all over again. Anyway, Slimer got a female version of Slimer, and they were joyriding the Ecto One, or the revamped Ecto One from Ernie Hudson's different character in the Ghostbusters universe, um, who owns a funeral home. They go from joyriding together to being sent into the portal that destroys the Traveler the Traveler from the original Traveler-like kind of essence from the original Ghostbusters, right? And the lady saved the city in which all of the authorities or the authority figures were all controlled by this one guy who decided to take on God in supernatural form after he befriended all of these ghosts and released them on the city. The only thing about him was that he was just eternally weird and creepy. Yeah, so acting in that movie is not really, it's subpar. Barely subpar in some cases. I'm not accusing any of those ladies of being bad actors. They're extraordinary on SNL. Comedic acting takes time and practice. Speaking as an actor, it really does. And they're brilliantly funny. It's just, I don't know if a lot of their work on that movie was welcomed and as dramatic as it needed to be. I don't see how that worked out well for them. In any case, moving on to the costuming, we all gain a sense of who's who and which is which in each of these characters. We know obviously by skin color Leslie Jones is replacing guess who? Ernie Hudson. We know Susan McKinnon in her own way is replacing Egon Spengler. We know that I guess Melissa McCarthy's character is replacing Bill Murray. And Kristen Wiig let me stop there. It's Kristen Wiig replacing Bill Murray because he was a professor. He was a professor at the same college that they gave Harold Ramis's tribute to, which kind of traipses right into costuming there. They gave a Harold Ramis tribute in that they just gave him a bust. Yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife did the guys a greater service than the other proposed movie in 2016 that Dan Aykroyd made the proposition to Paramount Studios, I believe. It's a good try. It was a spirited attempt. It just didn't work out. It's just not going to work out. Moving on to the musical score. It's flatlined. It's bad. I mean, it all plays into heavily orchestrated, composed music. which is great. I mean, I love it. And it's heavily dependent on who you're gonna call on Ghostbusters, on the Ghostbusters theme song. It's heavily dependent on that. What you see here is an example of a prequel, not a prequel, as an example of a sequel in which the writers and producers aren't really caring so much about what the audience wants to watch. It's about what they are trying to create. And it's all said and good and great if you are part of a successful franchise like, say, Ghostbusters, or you're with Marvel and you've done a great job with producing a few shows here and there. But you also have to remember how people are going to watch this and how they enjoy it. Because when you give a little power or a little consideration to all of you people here out there, when you give them that, you create a much more solid fan base and a lot more money when you know people are going to come to see your shows because they know you're not just out here in Hollywood creating stuff because you want to make money quick and get out. You're actually manifesting and manicuring your work to be accepted by audiences everywhere. I think that's something you got to put some work into. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of work. I mean, obviously, you ask a lot of writers and actors like myself to do the work when we come and sit before you guys. So I think on the other side of that, we got to get y'all have to go ahead and start putting out stuff that we actually like to watch. And you don't just cater to audiences who don't care about long epic movies anymore, or who haven't seen original versions of one movie to the next. They just know it's another movie and it keeps coming out. You can't keep manifesting and keep creating movies for those people. You also have to remember there are people like me who go to movies and we want to see something great. And it is a part of discussion topics. And yeah, I think social media is kind of beating out movies a little bit here and there. What with creators like myself, I'm in there, I'm included. I'm on video. Anyway, I'm included in that. I'm going to create my own content. I want to sit down and talk to people and really create a means in which entertainment is made for them and it doesn't take advantage of them or consider them stupid or not good enough, or doesn't consider them important enough when you're creating something and you want to make it work. Because you're only concerned about that money and about that bottom line and making it all back, which is fine. I don't argue with it. But I think you could definitely make your money back and more if you were a little more concerned with the people who go up and pay for tickets or pay for subscriptions. That's my honest belief in that. Anywho, that's my spiel there. Getting into cinematography with Ghostbusters. Yeah. Awfully offhand, fairly predictable, with the exception of the possession in which Melissa McCarthy was possessed by the antagonist at one point. I think that's some of the best cinematography they got going for them, hands down. Because they went from having Bill Murray in that room to not having him there at all. And I guess I also appreciate this. I appreciate them not showing Bill Murray dead. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure they killed him. But then again, that whole moment was pretty much glazed over fairly quickly. Bill Murray plays a debunker or a supernatural, super ghost show story debunker in a way, a doctor debunker, if you will. And he shows up to the joint. He shows up to the ladies' joint, which is right above a Chinese restaurant. Asks to see proof, and the proof, i.e., possessed Melissa McCarthy, flies out and projects. Well, no, they open Slimer's contained casket and let him just eject and fly right out and throw Bill Murray right out the window, I believe. No, it wasn't Slimer. It was actually the dragon. That's right. It was the dragon that they caught at a rock show, which in that whole sequence was just terrible. It's terrible. I mean, I get mosh pitting at a rock concert is something crazy, but there are new rules in case anybody didn't know. When you mosh pit and someone falls down, everyone stops. They pick that person up, they make sure they're okay, and they get back to mosh pitting and enjoying the movie. So you have conscientious. And I think even then, back in 2016, people were learning to do that. People were doing that forever. You cannot tell me that no one's noticing a giant, floating, flying, raging, screeching dragon that's bright green and glowing, and then you get it to sit right on Leslie Jones's shoulders. Is like, come on, man. And it was all that attempt to create humor, which didn't really work. Also, a little in my feelings about how they would mosh pit carry Melissa McCarthy, but they let Leslie Jones fall flat on her ass and on her back. And she said it already. I don't know if it was because she was big or if she was black. Either way, she's mad. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about that whole Ghostbusters movie. I fell flat on his back, and I don't know if it's because they replaced the black guy, or Ghostbusters is too big for its britches. And either way, I was kind of mad about it. And then they threw Zool in there at the very end too. Anywho, yeah, that's my whole spiel on Eternals and Ghostbusters 2016, featuring the likes of Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Susan McKinnon, and Leslie Jones. Not exactly worth it. Neither one of those are worth it. But hey, also want to throw this out there for creators and like myself and so many other audience members who are either or on that kind of front. You sometimes have to watch a bad movie to know how good a movie can be. Great flowers need manure to yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. All right, guys. So if you're still here, thank you all so much for listening. This is the after stuff. I think once I get popular enough, stretch it out, boys. Once I get popular enough, this kind of stuff is going to be on Patreon. And I hope to bring on some other guests, other people who are manic movie buffs like myself, who maybe here and there might forget what an actor's name is. But for the most part, this is Casey Amoir with the first simulcast episode of the Flick Through Podcast. Thank you so much for being here and watching. See you soon.